He would never work for the CIA. No. He would never.
You want to get in a single line, like just filter straight out? Straight out.
He's our current rep right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. We've met.
So, you're not on the on-campus scene.
Not really.
Salam shalom. Peace, salam shalom. Peace, salam shalom. Peace, salam shalom. Peace, salam shalom.
Well, just about 6 inches more towards me. You're kind of real close to that main out.
I know, I was seeing that. I was like, uh-oh.
We have several speakers today. The first one I'd like to welcome up is from one of our supporting organizations, a national organization of veterans, Veterans for Peace. I'd like to bring up the president of Veterans for Peace, Patrick McCann.
Another good Irishman. All right. Couldn't find any red in my closet to go down to the Chavez thing today, but it was the best I could do. I'll represent Bob Marley. Yeah, my name is Patrick McCann. I've been, for 6 weeks now, I've been the national president of Veterans. For 6 weeks now, I've been the national president of Veterans for Peace. I live here in D.C. Interestingly enough, our new vice president also lives here in D.C., Matt Southworth, who works with the Friends Committee on National Legislation on the Hill. Just real quickly, we have, we're trying to develop a strategic plan, and we've got 4 things that we're really interested in doing, and one of those is drones. And we have a lot of people, Veterans for Peace members, who are doing anti-drone work around the country. So I guess I'm here to meet people who can help us put some of that work together, put some organization. We actually need to develop our own committee because we have a lot of people doing the work. To be honest with you, one of our other tasks are Bradley Manning, and that's the stuff that I'm doing right now. So I'm here to listen and to learn from anybody who wants to come up to me in the course of the day and give me some information on how to hook the scores of veterans who are actively involved in drones work around the country and hook them in. So I'll leave it like that. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick. Resistance to the drones is happening all over the United States. In opposition to it is happening all over the world. Recently, in upstate New York, there were several peace activists who participated in an action. And to share about that action and resistance to the drones is Judith Kelly from Arlington, Virginia.
Thanks. This is exciting. Every time there's a resistance action, we need to celebrate it, lift up these people who have risked arrest. I'll read their names and the statement. Bill Frankel Strait, Providence, Virginia, Catholic worker. Nancy Gowan, Richmond, Virginia, SOA Watch, prisoner of conscience. Ellen Grady, Ithaca, New York, Catholic worker. Linda Latendre, Saratoga Springs, New York, friend of the Catholic worker. The Reverend Bill Pickard from Scranton, Pennsylvania, wonderful priest. Matt Ryan, Ithaca, New York, Catholic worker. Marianne Brady, Ithaca, New York, Catholic worker. Carmen Trotta, New York City, Dorothy Day, Catholic worker. And Jim Clune from Binghamton, also a Catholic worker. So here's their statement. We come to Hancock Airfield, home of the National Reaper Drone Maintenance and Training Center, this Ash Wednesday, to remember the victims of our drone strikes and to ask God's forgiveness for the killing of other human beings, most especially children. The killer drone strikes and the U.S.'s killer drone policies have taken the lives of thousands in a number of countries such as Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia. These strikes are illegal and immoral. Under international agreements which the U.S. has signed, the killing of civilians, extrajudicial murders, violations of national sovereignty, and violations of due process are all illegal acts. We come to Hancock Airfield this Ash Wednesday to repent for the actions of our government and to ask God's forgiveness and the forgiveness of the people we daily terrorize with these drones. We remind ourselves that our lives are brief and mysterious, and that, quote, from dust we were created, and to dust we shall return, unquote. The significance of our brief animation is the degree to which we love one another. Lent is a time to repent, literally to change our minds. It is a time to remind ourselves of Jesus' command to love our neighbors and our enemies. It is a time to remind ourselves of Jesus' radical, nonviolent message of love. Stop the killing, ground the drones, stop the wars. That's the statement from the Upstate Coalition to Stop Drones in the Hancock Air Base area. Thanks.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. So this week, we are going to be marking 10 years since the U.S. invaded, attacked, occupied Iraq. In the lead up to that war of aggression, that occupation, one of this country's national coalitions that led the opposition to that war, that we now know it was based completely on lies and deception. We've been vindicated on that count many times. The Answer Coalition. In 2002, I remember here in Washington, D.C., attending the rallies and the marches as they grew from smaller gatherings to much, much larger gatherings of people. Joining us today to talk about another gathering that's focused on the drones and what they're used for is Brian Becker of the Answer Coalition.
Thank you, Melody. I want to thank everyone, of course, for being here today and being out over and over and over again to say no to a government that speaks in our name and carries out, with each drone strike, a new war crime, a new crime against humanity, a new crime against peace. Every drone strike equals those who were convicted of war crimes and crimes against humanity and crimes against peace at Nuremberg. We all know that. That's why we're here. On Saturday, April 13th, people are coming from all over the East Coast to the White House for what we hope will be a very significant and large-scale protest against drones, drone bases in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, and everywhere. Next Saturday, let's see if we can get rid of some of the feedback. Next Saturday, at the Justice Center, which is located at 617 Florida Avenue, there will be a planning meeting from the organizations all over the East Coast for the April 13th action. I think that all of us who have been paying attention, and I think that's everyone here, can see the basic trend in U.S. foreign policy, not just in the last couple years, not since Bush launched the invasion of Iraq in 2003, but for the last decades. When Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld launched the criminal invasion of Iraq in 2003, one of the great crimes of the modern era, that came after 13 years of bombings and economic sanctions on that humbled country. And as I was speaking to Art before we began, we know it wasn't just Bush, but Clinton before him that used economic sanctions and bombing to relentlessly kill the people in Iraq who did nothing to us, whose government had been targeted for overthrow, but the Iraqi people paid that price. And we hear the message from Obama now that the drones are being used against those who kill their own people. Just as Bush said, we have to invade Iraq because Saddam was killing his own people. And when we're here today in front of the CIA, and we know that the U.S. government is killing Pakistanis and Yemenis and Somalis and Afghans, that they're killing our people because those people are our people. We don't say our people are the American people. The people of the planet are our people. And to the extent that they have become the center of the crosshairs for drone imperialism, when they kill them, they're killing our people. Today, every day, on April 13th, and all of the other actions during the coordinated days of action in April, we have to tell the world, especially the people of the world, that this government does not speak for us when it carries out these crimes against our people every day. And the only way the people of the world will know it is when we act. So what we do today makes a difference. What we do tomorrow makes a difference. And hopefully this movement will grow from the scores and hundreds to the thousands and hundreds of thousands, and then millions of Americans who say no to the government when it speaks in our name, killing our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. And after today's vigil here, we'll be going back to Langley Hill Friends, and we'll be discussing April and the April Days of Action, and also the action against the drones in Washington, D.C., organized by Answer. So we're here speaking out against the violence of the drones. And now we're going to hear some accounts of what happens. We're going to hear accounts of the victims. And I'd like to bring up Amber Mason from Dorothy Day Catholic Worker House.
The following accounts are of drone bombing victims. The first account is from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Picture this: 3 children who stand surrounded by the debris of their former home a few hours after it was obliterated by a Hellfire missile fired from a CIA drone in the early hours of August 23, 2010. When photographer Noor Bahram reached the children a few hours later, he said the children were shocked but had at least survived the blast. Their father, Bismillah, their mother, and 8 and 10-year-old brothers had been blown to pieces by the strike. The orphan children and their dead loved ones became the latest civilian victims of a U.S. war against Pakistani militancy in which they had played no part. The second account is from the Foundation for Fundamental Rights website. Sanuullah Jan, age 17, was an 11th grade pre-engineering student in the government degree college, Murali. On the 26th of November, 2010, after college, he and a couple of friends from college decided to go to Maransha, a nearby city. It was a nice day, and driving to another town with friends was quite enjoyable. It was on the road to Maransha that a missile fired from a drone burnt the car down. No one survived. Karuullah Jan, Sanuullah's eldest brother, reached the scene after he heard about the attack. All that was left was his dead brother's half-burnt college ID. Karuullah not only lost his brother, but a classmate, as both were in the same class. Sanuullah was the bright one of the family and used to help Karuullah in his studies, but not anymore. Today, Karuullah is pursuing his brother's legal actions against those who wrongfully executed his brother, and he is determined to get justice one day.
A voice is heard in Ramah, Hiroshima, Salvador. Women refusing comfort, for their children are no more. No garland of lovely flowers can dispel the ancient grief, or silence the angry voices that abhor the war machine. If the Herod in us could be faced and then tamed with compassion, all the dark clouds we've passed would bind in a murmur of peace. A voice is heard in Yemen, in Somalia, Pakistan. Women refusing comfort, for their children are no more. No garland of lovely flowers can dispel the ancient grief, or silence the angry voices that abhor the war machine. If the leaders could look in the eyes of the children we carry, they would forget the bombs they drop and their budgets for war. A voice is heard in Mali, Philippines, Afghanistan. Women refusing comfort, for their children are no more. No garland of lovely flowers can dispel the ancient grief, or silence the angry voices that abhor the war machine. If the nations so distant and separate could break bread together, coming to know know that we are family with warm hearts to share. A voice is heard in Rama, Hiroshima, Salvador. Women refusing comfort, for their children are no more. No garland of lovely flowers can dispel the ancient grief, or silence the angry voices that abhor the war machine.
This is from the Common Dreams organization, published on Wednesday, March the 6th, 2013, by Common Dreams. The doctor. Children traumatized and re-traumatized by drones in Yemen. Children dreams of dead people, planes and people running around scared. Andrea Germanos, staff writer. A report from a clinical and forensic psychologist just back from Yemen offers a disturbing picture of the horror drones have inflicted on children who are traumatized and re-traumatized by the strikes whose use amounts to a form of psychological torture and collective punishment. The findings come from clinical and forensic psychologist Dr. Peter Schaubel, just back from a week-long visit to Yemen, who presented at a press conference on Monday his evidence of a psychological emergency in the country as a result of drone strikes, and of the particularly heavy toll they have on the mental health of children, plagued with PTSD, as the mental anguish from the deadly strikes lasts long after the sound of the unmanned aircraft above. London-based human rights charity Reprieve reports that Chappell said, "What I saw in Yemen was deeply disturbing. Entire communities, including young children who are the next generation of Yemenis, are being traumatized and re-traumatized by drones. Not only is this having a truly awful immediate effects, but the psychological damage done will outlast any counter-program and surely outweigh any possible benefits." Case Channel 4 News reports that Chappell described hollowed-out shells of children and the story of the 8-year-old girl whose house is next to one hit by a presumed drone strike. Her father said that she vomits every day, and also when she hears aircraft or drones or anything related, said Dr. Chappell. She said in her words, "I am scared of those things because they throw missiles." Dr. Chappell also said the girl suffered from nightmares. She has been walking terrified from her sleep, he said. She points to the ceiling and says, "People there want me to suffocate." Her dreams are of dead people, planes, and people running around scared. Her dreams are of dead people, planes, and people running around scared. Kat Craig, legal director of Reprieve, who also recently returned from Yemen, added that drones objectively fail to achieve their purported purpose, saying that Chappell's findings represent further evidence that drones not only kill innocent civilians, but that their use amounts to a form of psychological torture and collective punishment. Children are afraid to go to school, and adults are unable to work, socialize, or function with any semblance of normality. As a result, drones objectively fail to achieve their purported purpose. Instead of keeping us safe, they breed animosity and tear apart the fabric of some of the poorest and disenfranchised communities in the world. A Hellfire missile costs over $60,000, which could be spent building schools and wells. Yemen needs aid and our support, not drones.
Thank you, Rita.
Thanks, Rita.
Thanks, Malky. Well, as some of you know, I spent a lot of time working right behind here. And I just want to use that prerogative to thank the CWAP unit for protecting us this morning. These gentlemen out here, you don't know what the CWAP unit is, the Catholic Worker and Other Civilians Protective Unit. It's been set up to protect those of us who exercise our First Amendment rights. So, on behalf of all of us, we want to thank you for protecting us. These drones, you know, the weapons are not only fired from the air, but they can be fired from a booth such as you see behind there. So these fellows are being very, very courageous in standing between us and that possible assassination technique. So thanks. There are lots of thoughts that go through my mind here. We're on Dolly Madison Boulevard. Now, as most of you remember, Dolly was James Madison's wife. And who is James Madison? He and George Mason were the drafters of our Constitution. What many of us probably don't remember is that George Mason, who lived just about 7 miles down this way, refused to sign the Constitution. He went to Madison and he said, Jim, I'm sorry to tell you this at this point. It was all drafted, all ready to be approved. He said, Jim, I can't sign this thing. And Madison, come on, George, you drafted most of what's going on. He said, Jim, it doesn't have a Bill of Rights, and so I cannot, in good conscience, sign the Constitution that you and I drafted. And Madison said, well, that's a hell of a thing. Tell you what, you just keep quiet about this, George, and I promise you that in 3 years, we'll get those 10 First Amendments that you want in the Constitution in. Now, in those days, when people make promises, they were people of honor. And so George Mason could say, all right, Jim, what's the deal? I'll keep my mouth shut. You guys get the Constitution passed, but you promised. And for the next 4 years, up and down the eastern seaboard, rode people on horses to the various legislatures. They got the 10 Amendments passed, all right? Now, what does that mean? Well, yesterday, this fellow, John Brennan, I know him. He was a failed analyst when he started out here, when I was doing my work here. He chose to swear himself in, or get sworn in, on a document that was touted to have extreme symbolic significance. It was a draft of the Constitution, a draft, all right? And it was had notes by George Washington, and that's what he picked to swear himself in. Okay. Now, people are saying there was a very symbolic significance to that. Well, either they don't know their history or they do. I don't know which is worse, but they must have realized that that draft of the Constitution did not have the first 10 amendments. Okay? I don't know which is worse, that they realized that that was the case and did it deliberately, or were completely oblivious to it. So, John Brennan, who now heads up this outfit, has not sworn on a Constitution that includes the 10 Amendments, the Bill of Rights. Well, what does that mean? Well, we exercise our First Amendment rights here today. We are protesting against the illegal, unmerciful, immoral killing of civilians by drones. And the Fifth Amendment is the one that's really applicable here. Who remembers the Fifth Amendment? Those with some gray in their hair probably remember the Fifth Amendment as that cowardly thing that suspected communists used to use to avoid incriminating themselves. Oh, you remember that? Okay. Now, it turns out the Fifth Amendment's a pretty good idea, as most of Madison and Mason's ideas were. It says no one, I'm sorry, I'll repeat. It says, quote, no person, okay? It doesn't say no citizen. It doesn't say no people living here in the United States. It doesn't say no Americans. It says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law.
Yes.
Okay?
What about grand juries then?
All right. Now, what do these guys say? What did Brennan say? And what does the chief law enforcement officer of our government, Eric Holder, say? Well, like the punk from New Jersey he is, like the punk from the Bronx that Holder is, they say, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry, forget about it. We do due process right here. We do. Yeah, don't worry about it. We do due process right here in the White House. Now give me a break. There are 3 branches of our government last time I read my civics book, and the judiciary has always been involved in due process. You can't do due process without judiciary. Now the fact that they're a bunch of cowards, and the fact that a bunch of people in Congress are a bunch of cowards, well, that's where we come in, folks. That's where we come in, because we're going to make a difference here. We're going to make Obama live up to what some of us believe still that he really, really believes, and make him do things that he might not feel empowered to do, that he might be afraid to do. Now, I was reviewing some of the things that Brennan said, and you might want to all listen in here. On the 5th of December 2005, right after he quit the agency, he was asked on Lehrer, on the NewsHour, Margaret Warner. She says, now, Mr. Brennan, what about this rendition thing? What is rendition? And Brennan, in his typically eloquent way, said, well, rendition is the process or procedure for moving people from one place to another. And she said, oh, well, why would you want to do that? Well, we need to move some people to places where they know how to interrogate people better than we do. And someone objected. Oh, she said, well, does that mean we're letting other countries do our dirty work? Is that what rendition is all about? And he says, well, I've never heard such arrogance to think that we know better how to interrogate people than other countries that have been at it for much longer. Oh, give me a break. Okay, that's what he said. That's rendition. That's torture. And here he is, right in the thick of it. I guess I would just mention that I've spent a lot of time in Europe and especially in Germany. And when I heard George Bush get up on the 6th of September 2006, before I mention what he said at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I want to mention some good news, okay? I was an Army intelligence officer, and so I take a little bit of pride in the discipline that we learned. And our chief, General John Kimmons, who is head of Army intelligence in 2006, heard that George Bush was going to get up in the White House in the afternoon and extol the virtues of enhanced interrogation techniques, or what he called an alternative set of interrogation procedures, and what the Senate Intelligence Committee calls what? EITs, that's what they are. They never, talk about euphemisms. They're EITs now, enhanced interrogation techniques, okay? Now, the morning before General Kimmons knew George Bush was going to get up to defend this, or to explain that's what we're doing, Kimmons said he's going to have his own press conference at the White House, okay? And he did, right across the river. And what did he say? He said, and I quote, "No good intelligence has ever come from abusive intelligence techniques. History shows that, and the empirical evidence of the last 5 years, comma, hard years, comma, also shows that, period," end quote. 5 years, 2006 minus 5, 2001. He'd been through it. He'd seen this stuff. He'd seen what it done to the discipline of our profession as U.S. Army intelligence officers. So that's kind of a backstory, but it's very important, because if you say, who are you going to believe, or people come up to you and say, well, who am I to believe about torture? Does it work or not? Well, you have a choice between General Kimmons, who spent his career as an intelligence officer, particularly on interrogation, or you can believe George W. Bush. So last thing I want to say is this, that when I heard Bush and the others talk about enhanced interrogation techniques. Now, we're not allowed to say that anymore. We're supposed to say EITs, right? EITs, you know, CAPs, you know, whatever. EITs, enhanced interrogation techniques. It rang a bell in my mind. You know why? Because I knew a little bit about German history. Verschärfte Vernehmung. Vernehmung is interrogation. Verschärfte is more sharp. In other words, enhanced interrogation. Verschärfte Vernehmung is right out of the Gestapo playbook. Do not blanch before that revelation. It's a direct translation, folks. A direct translation. Which brings me to the German experience, and I'll just, I have this favorite book here. It's called Defying Hitler. It's written by a young lawyer who was in Berlin at the time when things really started to go bad in 1933. I've singled out just a couple sentences here. So he's observing these things from the academy that he's studying. He's studying to be a German judge, okay? He's already a lawyer, and he's writing his diary. And on page 104, he says, you know, I'm really disturbed. I'm watching what's going on here, and, quote, there are few things as odd as the calm, superior indifference with which I and those like me watched the beginnings of the Nazi revolution in Germany, as if from a box at the theater.
We shall not be moved just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Sing it. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. No more killing in my name. No more killing in my name. We shall not be moved. No more killing in my name. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Standing for the victims. We're standing for the victims. We shall not be moved. We're standing for the victims. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. No more drone strikes. No more drone strikes. We shall not be moved. No more drone strikes. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved.
Oh, thanks. Good to see you.